Has there ever been a time in your life where you just felt unsatisfied in where you are? What's going on, everybody? It's Jay Breezy, and I'm back with another video, and I hope you guys will be encouraged by the message. We can all relate to feeling like we're praying day and night, probably about the same things, and most likely praying about the same people, the same situations, and it seems like day after day, night after night, God just isn't hearing our prayers. Lord, I don't mean to sound ungrateful, but why haven't you given me that job? God, why haven't you moved in my romantic life? I'm still waiting for a husband. I'm still waiting for a wife. Or perhaps you're thinking to yourself, why is my life specifically at a standstill right now while I see other people's lives just moving right along? And those are real questions and real concerns, but let's try to dissect those things and try to answer those questions right now. Let's get right into it. I want to go to a passage that makes me think about this topic, and we're going to start in Exodus chapter 13, and we're going to start in verse 17. Now when Pharaoh had let the people go, God did not lead them by the way of the land of the Philistines, even though it was near. For God said the people might change their minds when they see war and return to Egypt. Hence, God led the people around by the way of the wilderness to the Red Sea, and the sons of Israel went up in martial array from the land of Egypt. Now, check it out. The Israelites had just left Egypt, and instead of taking the direct path to the Red Sea, God takes these people, these Israelites, and take them on a longer indirect path. And why did he do that? The Lord had said that the Israelites may see war. They may see the threat of an oncoming war and turn back to Egypt. The Israelites had no idea where the Philistine countries were. They had no idea what the landscape was, but God knew. And God knew that if the Israelites were to see these things and see these people, they would be terrified and go back to Egypt. From this short passage, we can gather that the Lord sees things that we simply do not see. And we see later in Exodus and Leviticus that the Israelites just seemingly turn their back on God repeatedly because they feel like God has abandoned them. God has left them alone. But did they forget that God just brought them out of captivity? God just brought them out of slavery? Now, doesn't that sound familiar? Even though God literally brought food from heaven, brought water from a rock, led them out of slavery, the Israelites were still finding things to complain about. And doesn't that sound like us? Every time something doesn't go the exact way we want it to go, we want to turn on God and say, God, why did you allow that to happen? Now realizing that God has brought us out from so many other things that we ought to be grateful for. We complain to God when we don't have the things we think we need, when we don't feel like we've been blessed enough by God, when the whole time God has set us free from the bondage of sin and shame and regret, and we can only find this in Jesus. God has seen each and every one of us through good times, bad times, and hard times, and everyone has a story of going through something that they shouldn't have gone out of, but they only gone through it because the Lord was with them the entire time. And we can only give thanks of everything that God has done for us. In fact, the Bible tells us to be content. Let's look at Paul as he talks about being content even though he needs money, and being content in whether he has money. And he says this, in all circumstances, I am content because it's Christ who strengthens me. When we shift our focus to the things that we don't have, it's easy to blame God and causes us to look at him as if he owes us. And it's because of this mentality that causes us to have jealousy and dissatisfaction when we look at other people's things, and we say to ourselves, why don't I have that? But it's when we are content with the blessings that we have in Jesus and the spiritual components such as the fruit of the Spirit, like patience, joy, and kindness, that we can honestly be grateful for everything God has done for us. How many things have you used to do back then before you met Christ, and now that you've met Christ and grown with Christ, you look back and you say to yourself, I can't imagine doing that anymore? That inner working is only because of the Holy Spirit. It's only because of Jesus Christ. And so we ought to be thankful for things like that, not necessarily for monetary things or material possessions, but rather for the spiritual growth, the growth of being a disciple of Christ. Perhaps one of the reasons why we find it so easy to blame God when we don't get what we want is because we want to be in control. Watch this video right here to see why you don't really want to be in control. And I hope to see you there.